Good morning, Ansi. How are you today?
Good morning, Ané. I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm very, very well. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us for this interview. So, Ansi, you've suggested this topic of looking at the relationship between stress and chronic pain in horses. Why did you want to do this topic?
Because it's something that I think is really, really fascinating, and I think it can make such a big difference to
Mhm.
how our horses cope in their daily lives and how we help them manage their pain. And I think it's something that we really need to be more and more aware of, um, just because of us wanting to give the best of life to our
Mm,
equine companions.
absolutely.
So
Good.
So I think if we sort of review what chronic pain is, or I think maybe we must start with a review of what is pain. How about that?
Absolutely, yes. And I think chronic pain is a big problem. And I think a lot of horses experience chronic pain because it just goes unnoticed. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about chronic pain.
Well, you're exactly right, and I like what you said about the fact that it tends to go unnoticed because the definition of pain is that it's an unpleasant sensory or emotional experience.
Mm,
And it isn't always related to actual tissue damage. It could also be related to the potential for tissue damage to happen. And what the International Association for the Study of Pain actually says is that just because you're not able to communicate that you are in pain doesn't take away the possibility that an individual might be experiencing pain and is in need of appropriate pain relieving treatment. And I think this certainly does apply to horses.
mm,
It's very hard for them to verbalize the fact that they might be in chronic discomfort. And if you go back to the definition of what persistent or chronic pain is, it's any discomfort or pain or emotional distress, even that continues for a period of more than 3 months. And it might not always respond to the usual type of medical treatment.
So it's really interesting. I think we often forget that emotional aspect to it. It's you know for to us pain is a physiological response, and we feel like we can measure it, and we try and put a number on it, and we try and make it as objective as we can, but there is an emotional component, and I'm assuming that's where the stress is coming into it, um, especially for horses.
You're exactly right. So the stress response is a response, a physiological response from the body that has several components to it. And part of it is the nervous system, and that is the ability to feel pain and feel when there's tissue damage and the nerves' responses to that. But stress also results in an immune system response. And
Mm,
the immune system does a whole lot of processes in response to stress. Some of that is to actually increase the sensitivity of nerve endings. And that's kind of to prepare the body for action. So if the horse in the wild was to be, chased by a lion, the horse wants all the nerve endings to be as sensitive as possible.
mm.
But in the context of domestication and where there's sort of chronic pain, perhaps, you don't really want nerve endings to be more sensitive than they should be. The other thing that the immune system does in response to any threat is to generate an inflammatory response. So if the lion, for example, would almost get the horse and cause a bit of a wound, the body in the wild would want to be prepared by having an inflammatory response ready so that healing can take place and there's no infection that happens. But an inflammatory response exacerbates pain and exacerbates the
For
perception
sure.
of pain.
For sure. So what we're basically saying then is that a horse that is more stressed, will have a more active, all these processes will be more active. It'll have more inflammation, and we'll have a sensitization of the peripheral nerves, which would make it more susceptible to pain and to chronic pain, which means that if there's anything in its environment that is uncomfortable, a boot that doesn't fit properly, it might become painful where it didn't need to be in the first place. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly it. And that's called hyperalgesia. And it is peripheral sensitization, so the peripheral nerves become more sensitive, but it's also central sensitization. So the brain actually learns from previous pain. So the point of pain is to try and protect you from damage,
Yes.
and try and make sure that whatever caused the damage, you don't expose yourself to that again. And what happens is if you're exposed to a painful stimulus, the next time the same stimulus is presented, there's a greater response to that. And that's central sensitization. So that is where the brain, every time that the same stimulus is repeated, that might be considered as a threat or something that can cause damage, the pain response is greater, even though the stimulus is the same.
I think that is so crazy. I remember the first time that I learned about peripheral and central hypersensitization from Dr. Kenneth Ubad. And I think for 3 days I was reeling, just realizing that basically our bodies learn from pain how to perceive pain better every time. And the more chronic pain is, the worse that sensitization gets, until you get to a point where, how do you manage that pain? It just becomes impossible to get that pain under control again. So I think that's and if stress plays a part in that for horses, especially as prey animals in this environment we keep them in, where they're competing and they're exposed to so many scary and unnatural, I want to say, environments, it's just, can you imagine? It
Absolutely.
just blows my mind to think about it.
And that becomes a real challenge. And it's actually a fantastic area where we can be really involved and make a big difference, because it's now a central thing. It's now about how the brain is processing information. And the only way to start addressing that and reverse that negative cycle of increasing sensitivity is to start to change the way that the horse starts to perceive these negative stimuli. So that means we have to try and get the horse's brain involved in managing chronic pain. So they actually did some really, really nice studies where they looked at acute stress.
Yes.
And the examples they used was when an animal is being held and it can't escape. And the other stress test they did was exercise stress test. So they would swim an animal until it's exhausted, or some other unusual exercise at a very high level. And they found that increased sensitivity and pain sensitivity. So if you think of a horse's life, how often do they get held when they're trying to actually escape? Usually for their own safety, but they don't see it that way. They're trying to get away from this really scary thing, and we're holding them. And they placed on a lot of exercise stress during training and competition, or even traveling. And all these things can contribute to how badly they perceive pain.
It's amazing. These animals are just incredible, what they deal with on a day-to-day basis, and how forgiving they are of the things that we put them through at the end of the day. So what are you thinking we can do as physiotherapists in terms of helping to manage the situation, trying to manage stress and chronic pain that can result from it?
Well, it's actually quite interesting, because if you look at animal welfare, and I'm sure you're familiar with the 5 freedoms of animal welfare, and those are the things that relate to animals' quality of life that humans are in control of. So the first freedom from hunger and thirst, and the second is freedom from discomfort, and that's basically providing adequate shelter and somewhere to sleep. And those things most of our horses have. We provide very well for our horses, and they've got food, and they've got water, and they've got a safe stable. And on the whole, they've got proper veterinary care and farriery, so they generally mostly free from at least acute pain and injury. But then we come to the last two freedoms, which is the freedom to express normal behavior and the freedom from fear and distress. And those are the ones where we can really make the biggest difference. So I think our big role is also in how we educate people to be aware of the negative aspects of stress. I don't know if you're familiar at all with the um, horse grimace scale, the facial pain scale that they've developed for horses.
I've heard of it, but I haven't looked at it yet.
So that's the kind of thing that we need to be reading up with and becoming really, really familiar with, um, so that we can. The horse is actually trying to communicate with us when they are really uncomfortable with the situation. And fortunately, there are some protocols and some measurement tools available for having a look at stress and welfare issues in horses. A lot of it is primary welfare, which is, again, things surrounding food and water and shelter and sort of obvious lesions and lamenesses, which is
Yeah.
not really what we're talking about now. But secondary welfare assessments involve assessing sort of the horse's social environment and how they're responding to the humans in their environment in daily interactions. And one of the things we can become really sensitive to is how the horse is responding to our interactions with them as therapists. So some of the things that are negative indicators of horse welfare are things like aggression. Is the horse showing us clear facial and behavioral signs that they don't want us to approach? Avoidance, moving away from us. And it's really easy as experienced horse handlers to just, make the horse not go away.
Yes.
We put them in an environment where they can't avoid us, our approach. We put on a halter, we put
Yes.
on a bridle, and we make them stay. But it's quite important to start to be a bit more sensitive about their lack of comfort with our approaches and our handling of them. Because if they're not comfortable with that, that increases their stress and it's going to reduce how effective our treatments are.
I think that's so relevant, Ansi, because we we absolutely we become very good at asking or telling them to do what we want them to do and achieving what we want them to do. And I think that obviously that is necessary both for our safety and for the horse's safety, but it has to come along with a bit of communication and listening to the feedback that the horse is giving them, or giving to us. And I have to say, for me, it's been a very much a process of becoming more conscious of what the horse is feeling, what the horse needs, and allowing them to express that. So if they need to move their feet, they're going to, I need to let them move their feet. If they need to swish at a fly, they need to swish at a fly. Whatever the case may be, just not restricting them in the basic things can open up a channel of communication for them in the more difficult things. So when I'm really starting to get into where is it painful, how is this muscle responding, can you do this movement, can you not do this movement, then they're more open to trying and to giving you that feedback. But if we block them off in the most basic things, can I actually put a halter on you, yes or no, then they don't speak to us. They don't give us that feedback. So it starts right at the bottom when you go and catch the horse, and it doesn't mean that you can't not put the halter on the horse, you can't not catch it, but you can be respectful of the fact that that he's communicating he doesn't want to be in this situation, and you can allow him to say that and listen and find an alternative that is going to be okay for him and that he's going to be able to cope with and to handle.
Exactly. And I like the word that you use, find alternative, because it is just about trying to find a way to make it a positive experience for the horse.
Mm-hmm.
And it might in the beginning be, unfortunately, I do have to put this halter on you, but let me show you that it can be a good thing, you know? The one component that we did discuss briefly is also the emotional aspect surrounding pain. And there's two aspects of the emotions that also influence the perception of pain. And one is a word called valence, and that is basically, is the experience positive or negative? And if you can create a positive interaction by giving the horse at least some leeway to give you some communication, and then making it into a positive experience, have treats on you, you know, have
Mm-hmm.
do little scratches in between on his neck, do something that will make it that it is an experience the horse can look forward to and isn't trying to continually avoid. And the other aspect is arousal. So high arousal, so if the horse is getting stressed or anxious, even because you took it away from its friend who's still in the paddock, arousal also increases pain perception. So it's those little things that we just need to be a bit more sensitive to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and these are things that we can make our owners and riders more aware of as well. I've been very aware of it in the riding aspect of life, and where do our horses the stress come from? The environment that they're kept in, especially when they're isolated from other horses. If they're kept in a small stable and they don't have that social interaction, how that is so important to them, and from their interaction with us, where we tell them what to do and they have to do it, or they get spurred, or they get a little kick, or they get a tap with the whip, or whatever the case may be. And it doesn't have to be blatant abuse, but I feel like it's almost the subliminal bullying if there isn't this continual feedback of saying, can we do this, can we try that, yay or nay. And again, it isn't really like, you can't say, okay, let's try it, and the horse says no, and then you like, okay, well, we're not going anywhere then today. You need to achieve what you're asking the horse to do, but you can do it in a way where you're listening to the feedback that he's giving, and there's always a reason why they're resistant, why they are not wanting to perform a behavior. It could be because you're asking in the wrong way. It could be because there's an external stimulus. Whatever the case may be, just being respectful of what they are communicating to us makes a massive difference in their perception of what's happening and in their stress, in their level of stress. And I think that at the end of the day is what we want to reduce, is the amount of stress that they're experiencing just in their day-to-day lives.
Absolutely. I think the important thing is for us to really, like you say, start educating and making our clients really, really aware of what is stress and the health effects that chronic stress has. So yes, we can't change the entire equine industry and suddenly everybody only allows their horse to do what they want to do. Um, well, it depends.
Yeah.
I don't think we do have a lot of work then anymore. But just those little things of how can we maybe reduce the arousal and have a little bit of reward, and not only force. So if you are going to have to create a little bit more pressure to have the horse perform as, to trot, how are you rewarding? What's the positive outcome to that? Yeah, how just to try and be a lot more positive in many ways because of the health effects of the chronic sort of pressure and bullying and stress, that we do put our horses under. And I think if people start to see it from the point of view of it's affecting their horse's long-term health to not have a positive interaction, they'd be more willing to look at alternatives and options and maybe be a little bit more kind at times.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And luckily, that's what I love about the profession that we're in, is we generally do have clients that actually care and that are kinder, and yeah, that it makes me happy.
No, absolutely. And we all come from a background of being taught a certain way to interact with animals, and we taught a certain way to interact with horses and what's normal. And as we learn more, we start to understand that maybe it isn't normal, maybe that's not the way it needs to be, it can be done differently. And you're so right, our clients want to do the best for their horses, they want to know more so that they can give their horses the best possible quality of life. So just helping them understand what it is that they can start to do slightly better, most of our clients would be really open to.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ansi, thank you so much. This has been a very interesting topic, and I think one that needs to be discussed, and one that needs to be thought about, and where we need to ask questions all the time and delve deeper into all the time, and not just in horses, but in all of the animals in our lives and in our own lives. You know, I've adopted a very strict no stress policy in my own life. So yeah, thank you so much for suggesting this topic. It was
Oh, no, it was
fantastic, and
wonderful.
thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And yeah, good luck with that no stress personal life. It's the best place to start.
Thank you so much, Ansi. Bye.
Bye.